Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Wasting Sanity, and I'm here to talk to you about Nephilim Rifts. From what I understand, Blizzard wants us to run these rifts more than anything else in the game. We are supposed to earn access to these rifts by running adventure mode. But the flaw is, well, Blizzard, I hate to break the news to you, but they're boring. So boring and straightforward that it starts to put people to sleep. I have found myself dozing off in the middle of a run just because, yes, in fact, I was this bored. How can Blizzard bounce back from a big oopsie? Well, let's take a look at the bell curve. It is called the bell curve because it is shaped like a bell. Pretty simple. You start from the bottom and you work your way to the top, at which point the game becomes easier since you are at the top of the curve. You have everything to make your character successful, and since everything is easy, you come down the other side of the curve. Since this is basically what we are dealing with, let's ignore story and focus completely on simple character progression. For the most part, this game is based solely on gear. So that's what we need to address. Once you are at the top of the bell curve, you have reached max level and you have the best gear. Well, what exactly is the best gear? The best gear happens to be the gear that allows your character to function, and you just don't see anything else dropping that would improve your character. I mean, other people might be getting legendaries and things like that to improve their character, but it just doesn't happen to be dropping for you. Once you have reached this peak, either you manage to slowly but surely find those upgrades, maybe 1 in 1,000, 100,000, or you don't, which slowly drives your interest in the game down to the bottom of the bell curve on the other side. Blizzard's game curve starts you at the bottom, and as you start to reach the top, your engine sputters as if you are stalling, or they are stalling, so that way they can release more content. But either way, something is stalling here. Now, this would end up causing it to where you have the same sensation as I mentioned before, where the drops aren't there and you go falling down the bell curve. Well, that's not what Blizzard intended, but that's basically what the results are. Now let's look at my ideal bell curve, or game curve. Once you reach the top of a starting curve, that is not where you stop. You continue to push up a new curve. But at this point, you have a choice. Do I continue to farm the current curve or peak of that curve? Or do I push up the new curve? Now, you'll want to farm the peak because of the fact that the peak will allow you to get the gear you need to start to push into the new curve. We'll go into more detail on that a little bit later, but I want to address something else really quickly. I want to bring up the fact that we can now jump into different acts without actually having to leave the game. But now not only do we have to earn our way into a map, but it is a map that has a typical lower drop ratio than the rest of the game. That doesn't make any sense. It sounds rather strange. Why run a map with a toll charge when I can easily run the rest of the game and have better drops? Now, mind you, I have like 400 of these fragments to allow me to enter this, so entering it isn't really an issue. It's just kind of odd. So how do we fix this problem? How do we put my game curve into D3 and fix the issues at hand to basically make the game better? Well, here is what I'm proposing. First of all, the loot drops in the Nephilim Rift should be doubled or even tripled off of elite groups. Increase the drops off of the Rift Guardians. Oh, and there shouldn't be a single blue item dropping from an elite group. And make the chests more interesting again. Every time I see a chest, I automatically assume it's going to be full of junk. This takes the joy out of seeing a chest. Lower how many chests there are, and increase the drop rate as far as like how much loot's in it. It's almost as if the chests are just full of dirty laundry, and every time we run up, we start rifling through clothing in order to find a couple spare gold coins. It's kind of shameful. Now, to create a proper environment to allow for my curve, we have to establish that there is a cap in the game with a sub-tier system based on gear. This is where we make it interesting. All gear currently in the game is to be considered Tier 1 or Torment 1 or T1. The leap from Torment 1 and Torment 2 gear should be rather large. Creatures fighting in Torment 2 should hit a lot harder compared to Torment 1. So basically the creatures that are currently in T6 should be in T2. But the gear in T2 should be vastly improved compared to where it is now. After all, if what is in T2 should be from T6, then what should be in T3 should be from T12. See where I'm going with this? But don't lose the solo player in all of this. A character with the highest yellow T3 gear should be able to solo T3 without it constantly being a close call. So what or where do we farm exactly? This is where the Nephilim Rifts comes into play. They would have drops that would start you just enough on the next curve to give you a foothold. But it shouldn't be the difficulty of the next curve. Instead, it would, or should, be on par with the current T3, with better drops to allow players to get that foothold I mentioned. This will encourage players to be interested in the game because there is a greater challenge involved and there is a sense of progression. Ah, but why? Why have us run Nephilim Rifts? They're so boring. Well, they don't have to be that boring. Orc says that the ancient Nephilim would test their worth by fighting through enchanted realms. Worth can be measured in many ways. Mini side quests that would give certain rewards from fragments to legendary items would improve the interest in the Nephilim Rifts. The side quests could range from anything of escort to assassination. New maps should be introduced because why would a Nephilim Rift open a portal to someplace you've been before or looks like places you've been to? Wouldn't it be to someplace different? When I think of a rift, I think of a new world or another dimension. So there should be some new maps, new creatures, and new affixes on elites. All maps should be completely random of each other. Preferably not pre-created maps, but maps that are actually randomized. Not multiple different maps placed together via door. After running all of the rifts, you find yourself loaded down with blood shards. Well, when I look at the blood shard menu through the vendor, I have a few issues. We have one-handers and two-handers and quivers, orbs, and mojos. But we're missing other class-specific items like crusader shields, fists, sacrificial daggers, flails, wands, bows, and mighty weapons. If we were going to have at least 3 class-specific items separated from the rest of the list, well, why aren't the others I mentioned handled the same way? That really doesn't sound too fair, does it? These are just a few ideas that should improve the replay value of Diablo 3. Now, for those who enjoy playing the game, if you like the sound of my ideas, make sure to like the video. For Blizzard, if you like and use my ideas, but want more, well, throw me an email and we will talk about it. As always, thank you for watching. I do appreciate it.